Hello everyone and welcome back to another video on the channel. Today we're going to be talking about The Invitation, which is just coming out this weekend, not to be confused with The Invitation that came out earlier in 2015. This is a movie that is, based on the trailers. I wasn't really looking forward to this movie too much because it looked like a blatant ripoff of Ready or Not, which I love that movie. I have the poster right here. That is a fantastic movie, and in a lot of ways this movie is similar to that, but it also is very similar to Get Out, and with Get Out being the cultural phenomenon it was, and that tentpole, big movie in the horror genre that it was, of course horror movies in the future are going to try to imitate that movie's success. And so this movie, I'll honestly say, is definitely a love child between Get Out and Ready or Not, but it fails at what made those two movies as special as they were. And so we're going to be talking about spoilers for this movie, and I don't think this movie was terrible by any means. I actually respect this movie a lot because there was a lot of good things in it. So let's start off with the positives in this movie. First off, Nathalie Emmanuel is phenomenal in this movie, and I've seen her in quite a bit of things. I really liked her in Game of Thrones, and honestly I really like her character in the Fast and Furious movies. I know, of everybody in those movies, she's the one character that doesn't know how to drive cars really well, and so it's honestly kind of refreshing in that franchise to have somebody that's not an expert at driving all these super elaborate routes. And there's a scene in the most recent one where she didn't know how to drive the car, and she's very endearing in that movie, and she's very endearing in this one as well. In terms of a lead for a movie, she can definitely lead a movie. Jessica M. Thompson is the director of this movie, and I will say this movie was very well directed. I love the look of this movie, the production design, the costume design, and the makeup and hairstyling, all that stuff, and the practical effects looked really good. And I think the production of this movie, like I said, that production value, the way this movie was made and put together and crafted into making a final product to give to an audience, was very well done. I think this movie falters in the script department because it was trying to be other movies and it wasn't trying to be its own thing. And I think that is the biggest flaw that this movie has. So like I said, spoilers ahead, let's get into what this movie is really about. So if you've seen the trailer, I do think the trailer showed a bit too much, because you do know that they are, you're following this character who has followed this, 23andMe type thing. She's kind of down on her luck. She has lost her mom recently, and her dad died when she was young, so she has kind of lost all her family. So she's trying to seek out other family members that she has out in the world, and she's confronted by her cousin that lives in London. He's a part of this rich, lavish family in that country, and he invites her to a big event wedding that they're going to have at this manor that is run by this one guy, Walter, played by Thomas Doherty. And this guy is just right away supposedly really charming. I thought he was kind of creepy immediately because he is supposed to be kind of the villain of this movie, but there's supposed to be some charm there. There's supposed to be some romance that is blossoming between these two characters throughout her journey into, discovering her new family in this world and discovering the new lifestyles that they have. And this guy who runs this place where they're hosting the wedding is very charming. They start to have some sort of romantic feelings for each other throughout the entirety of the first half of this movie. And I think that is where the trailers kind of mess up, because the trailers kind of pitch it as a Ready or Not ripoff, whereas the beginning of this movie and the setup of this movie is very much like Get Out. She even has a best friend that is kind of funny, that they have this back and forth. She's making sure that she's constantly texting her so she knows her location at all times. She's in this manor. She's being introduced to this family where she keeps on seeing these weird and bizarre things in this family that are kind of red flags, but she decides to ignore it and move on anyway. Very similar to Get Out. And it does also have some very strong, not necessarily strong, social commentary, but very up in the forefront of this movie, some social commentary in terms of class, in terms of, the characters' economical statuses and how they treat the people who they view as lower than their economical status. So this movie does have something to say, but what made Get Out special is that, yes, the race, commentary was at the forefront of that movie, but everything else in the background of that movie was also subtly hinting at those things, and it was just kind of subconscious in that film, where you watch it and you're trying to figure out what is making you so uncomfortable, and it was the point of the movie, and it was the general themes of the movie that made it as good as it was. This movie has those social commentary things on the forefront. It has that down, but it doesn't have those subtleties. It doesn't have those, those building up moments where you kind of see things happening in the background and you think, why is that so odd and unsettling? And you figure out by the end of the movie why you were so unsettled before. It's because this movie doesn't have that sort of building of tension. In terms of this movie being a horror movie, all the horror movie sequences of this movie are fairly cliched and generic. It feels like every scene of suspension was just like you're going to have suspense for this one scene and this one scene only, and it's going to have a full payoff in this one scene with a jump scare. That is a type of horror you get out of this movie, which I was kind of disappointed by, because this is a movie, I think it was PG-13. There's nothing in this movie that really felt rated R to me. So if it is rated R, it really does not seem like it should be, because that suspense and that horror, like I said, was very generic and very by the book. Jump scare, a little bit of suspense, jump scare, a little bit of suspense, jump scare, and a lot of just fluff in the middle. But like I said, that fluff was led by an endearing lead character, by a very endearing lead actress that's giving a very endearing lead performance. And so she's bringing you through the first half of this movie. So the first half, I think, was pretty solid. But then you get to the trailer aspects of it where everything starts being revealed. And I think this is where the movie really should have gone in a different path, because as you've seen from the trailer, she's just kind of forced to marry this guy, the lead of the manor. You know, she's keeps on asking throughout the entire movie, why aren't we meeting the actual couple that we're here to see the wedding for, because she is actually the bride. And that was actually the original title of this movie. This movie was originally titled The Bride, but if you title it that, it's kind of spoiling the movie. But the trailers and the marketing kind of market a movie called The Bride, not The Invitation, because The Invitation is more like a Get Out type thing. So if they market it as a Get Out type thing, when the whole reveal happens that they're all vampires and they're kind of luring other family members in outside of this thing to create this perfect, you know, dynamic of these four families coming together, and once they're all together, they're basically immortal and they can live forever, and she's the last piece to this puzzle to kind of finish out this family tree. So all this backstory and exposition is given out through some side characters, and it's just kind of thrown at you, and there's some interesting ideas in here. One of the ideas is that, you know, the main character, she actually is related to this family, so it's not like a Get Out type thing where they, you know, go out to find these people, lure them back in, and then kill them like they do, or not kill them, but replace them, or have them be replaced by the brains of the other creepy white people and Get Out. You know what I'm talking about. But it's not like that. She's actually related. She has a purpose in this actual family. She has a place in it, and they want her because she is a part of this family, and she is the final piece to kind of creating this, you know, just family of immortality, essentially, of these vampires. And so she has a connection with her great-grandmother being in this family. And I think it was the woman at the beginning of the movie. In the opening scene, there's this woman who's in that same room that she sleeps in, and then she kind of realizes that all these terrible things are happening. She takes this statue and she jumps off the thing, essentially hanging herself, and she takes herself out of the equation. I think that was the great-grandmother. And so essentially what happened is she had, you know, relationships with one of these servants in this house, and then she kind of had him run off with the child and go, and that's how she got to America. She was completely separated from this family for a reason because of her sacrifice. And I was kind of hoping that that was the direction that they would go with this story, and you kind of find out more about, you know, the great-grandmother, and how, you know, the main character is very similar to the great-grandmother, and how she has respect for all the other people in the house, all these servants, all these maids, and all these butlers. You know, she has respect for them, and that's just something that tie and that connection was never truly made, and it just felt like it was a hollow connection. It's like, yes, that is why, you know, she's able to get out of this situation. That is why she's not succumbing to that, you know, lure of all this wealth and all this immortality of life, because she is more like her great-grandmother, and she wants to try to escape the situation rather than embrace it. And so instead, this last 30 minutes of the movie turns into Ready or Not, where she's, you know, the bride in the wedding. She decides not to go with it. She, you know, burns the whole place down. There's even a scene that is very reminiscent of Ready or Not, where she's, you know, walking out of the building, burning in the background. She kind of smiles at the camera, whereas the end of Ready or Not, that's essentially what happens with her. You know, she goes through everything. She survives the situation. She lights the place on fire. She's walking out. She sits on that, you know, staircase, and all these, you know, paramedics ask if she's okay. She just lights her cigarettes and she just smiles, because that is a satisfying ending for that character. And I think the reason why that movie works is, you know, that movie sets up this relationship that you want to believe, that you want to root for. This movie, you know, this relationship is BS from the trailer, so you're not really rooting for this relationship and this romance that's blossoming in this movie itself to actually work. Ready or Not has that type of, you know, thriller where you're really endeared with this character and you want her to survive and you want this situation to go in a positive way. But when you get to that ending and everybody blows up and she is able to move on without all these people, without all this baggage that's behind her, and she's able to survive fully, it is satisfying. This movie doesn't have that satisfying ending for the last 30 minutes because, for one, this movie's extremely goofy. The romance stuff is goofy. That's why it doesn't work. The dialogue points out how cliched it is. It points out, you know, how just generic it is in a lot of places, and it just is never believable because, again, you saw that it turns bad in the trailer. And then when it comes to the fight scenes and what happens at the end of this movie, once she figures out that they're vampires and that she needs to drink the blood of this, you know, guy that she's going to be married to in order to become a vampire, and then he needs to drink her blood for this, you know, whole pact to kind of solidify in her to live up to her prophecy, essentially. And, you know, she drinks the blood of him, she becomes a vampire, and then she lights everything on fire and doesn't allow him to drink her blood to kind of create, you know, this finalized thing to have them win the battle. And if she kills him, then those powers will go away and she will go back to normal. So it's not like there's any stakes, you know, all she has to do is kill him because she's not going to be a vampire forever. And the vampire fights are so corny that like it just does not work. She like hisses at people. It's just the fighting, the editing just doesn't work. It turns into like a very poorly done action movie at the end. And that's just not what this movie was. If it kind of stuck with more of the Get Out type thing and kind of went in its own direction in terms of having it tie into the family thing and having it tie to the great grandmother and have this historical aspects to it, maybe this movie could have worked well. But it tried to be Get Out for the setup, it tried to be Ready or Not for the finale, and it just never really came together as one cohesive original piece of, you know, film. So those are my thoughts on The Invitation. What did you guys think of this movie? If you guys saw it, did you enjoy it? Because I do think this movie at times can be enjoyable, but it just doesn't stick the landing for me. So let me know in the comments down below what you guys thought of this film. I'm very curious to hear all your guys' thoughts. And if you enjoyed this video, definitely subscribe to the channel and leave a like on this video to see more videos just like this one. So thanks everybody for watching, and I hope to see you all in my next one.